Houston, Texas, the Meridian Tower, 31 floors, built in 2018. The architect who designed it lives on the 14th floor. His name is James Whitfield. He has lived there since the building opened. He knows every measurement, every load-bearing specification, every tolerance in every wall of that structure. He called us in January. He said he needed someone to document what was happening before he could no longer trust his own records. He sent us his architectural drawings, his field notes, 41 photographs, and this recording. We had a structural engineer review the drawings. She called us after 2 hours and asked one question: which room is he talking about? We told her the study, northeast corner, 14th floor. She said, "That room isn't on the drawings I'm looking at." We sent her the originals. She said, "I know, that's what I mean." The chair was gone on a Wednesday morning. I had placed it in the study the previous Monday. A reading chair, leather, substantial. I had sat in it Tuesday evening for approximately 40 minutes. I had left the room at 10:47 p.m. I know the time because I checked my phone when I stood up. Wednesday morning, the chair was not in the room. The room was otherwise undisturbed. The books on the shelves were in order. The desk lamp was where I had left it. The door was closed, as I had left it. The chair, 90 pounds of frame and leather and hardware, was simply gone. I checked the rest of the apartment. I checked the hallway. I checked with the building manager. Nothing. I went back to the study and I stood in the doorway and I looked at the space where the chair had been, and I understood, with the instinct of someone who has spent 30 years reading spaces professionally, that something was wrong with that room in a way that had nothing to do with the chair. My name is James Whitfield. I'm 58 years old. I have practiced architecture for 31 years. I designed Meridian Tower from the site survey through final inspection. I know this building's geometry the way a composer knows a score. Every dimension in this structure came from my hand or was approved by it. I am telling you that because what I'm about to describe is a spatial impossibility in a building I designed. And I need you to understand that I am not a person who uses the word impossibility casually. In 31 years, I have never used it professionally. The word means the measurements are wrong, and my measurements are not wrong, except in that room. In that room, for reasons I cannot resolve, the measurements are wrong. I'll say one other thing up front. I have not slept in that apartment for 6 weeks. I am recording this from a hotel 6 blocks away. I still have my key. I have not gone back. I don't know if I'm going to go back. The study is the northeast corner room of the 14th floor unit. In the original design, it functions as a secondary bedroom. 9 feet 2 inches wide, 12 feet 4 inches deep, 8-foot ceiling. Standard residential specification for this building class. I converted it to a study when I moved in. Bookshelves on 3 walls, a desk under the east window, adequate lighting, a functional, contained space. I used it every day for 5 years. The northeast corner of any building sits at the intersection of 2 exterior walls. In Meridian Tower, those walls are composite panel over steel stud. I specified the assembly myself. The northeast corner of each floor is the point in the structure furthest from the central service core. Mechanically, it is the quietest part of the building. No HVAC trunks, no plumbing risers, no elevator shaft adjacency. The study should be the most acoustically dead room in the apartment. It has been, since the beginning, the quietest room I have ever occupied. Not peaceful quiet, the other kind. The kind that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. I noted it when I first moved in. I told myself it was a feature. Before the chair, there were smaller things. I want to document them in order because the order matters. A paperweight, glass, substantial, that I keep on the desk as a reference object. I use it to hold drawings flat during review. In the third year of living in the apartment, I noticed it was not on the desk. I found it in the kitchen. I assumed I had moved it and forgotten. 2 weeks later, a coffee mug I had left on the desk, gone in the morning. Not in the kitchen, not anywhere I could find. I bought a new mug. I did not think seriously about the first one. A book, a specific reference book I used regularly. Ching's Architecture, Form, Space, and Order. I set it on the desk on a Thursday evening. Friday morning it was not on the desk, not on any shelf, not anywhere in the apartment. I have a precise memory for object placement. It is an occupational habit. Spatial memory is foundational to architectural practice. I do not misplace things in ways I cannot account for. I told myself I was getting older, that my spatial memory was less reliable than I believed. I told myself that for 2 years. After the chair disappeared, I approached the room professionally. I measured it. Floor plan in hand, my original drawings, the as-built documentation I had signed off on during construction inspection. I measured every dimension of the study. The width was correct, 9 feet 2 inches. The ceiling height was correct, 8 feet. The depth was not correct. The room measured 11 feet 9 inches deep. The drawing said 12 feet 4, 7 inches missing. I measured again, same result. I borrowed a laser measuring tool from a colleague, more precise than a tape. Same result, 11 feet 9. I checked the room on the 13th floor directly below. I had access through the building manager, who assumed I was doing a maintenance assessment. That room, same northeast corner, same configuration, measured 12 feet 4 inches. Correct. I checked the room on the 15th floor above. 12 feet 4. Correct. Only the 14th floor study was wrong. Only my room. 7 inches of space that existed above me and below me did not exist around me. I stood in the center of the study for a long time with my measuring tape in my hand. I placed a camera in the room, a standard security camera, motion activated, cloud storage, the kind I had recommended to clients for years. I mounted it in the upper corner above the door, angled to cover the full room. I placed a second chair in the study, deliberately. I wanted to document the process. The camera recorded for 31 hours before the motion sensor stopped triggering. Not because nothing was moving, because the camera was gone. I checked the cloud storage. 31 hours of footage, then nothing. The last frame showed the room intact, chair present, shelves intact, camera mount visible in the corner reflection from the desk lamp. The frame after that does not exist. The footage simply ends. I bought another camera. I placed it in the same position. I checked the cloud storage the following morning. 37 hours of footage ending in the same way. Last frame intact, then nothing. The camera was gone. Both cameras had been connected to continuous power through a wall outlet. The outlet still had power. The cameras were not there to receive it. I sat at my kitchen table and I looked at the open study door from across the apartment, and I understood that the room was not just losing objects, it was losing evidence of itself. I tied a rope to the chair. I want to be clear that I recognize how this sounds. I am a licensed architect with 31 years of professional practice, and I tied a rope to a chair and placed the chair in a room in my own apartment. The rope was 20 feet of nylon utility cord. I tied one end to the chair leg with a double bowline, a knot I learned sailing, the kind that holds. I ran the cord out under the study door and tied the other end to the hallway radiator, which is bolted to the wall. I closed the study door. I checked the cord at 9 p.m. Taut. Tension from the chair. I checked it at midnight. Taut. I checked it at 6 a.m. The cord was taut. I pulled on it. Resistance. I opened the study door. The chair was gone. The cord ran from the radiator, under the door, across the study floor, to the center of the room. It ended there. Cut cleanly. No fraying. The cut end was sitting on the floor. The remaining cord, the section that had been attached to the chair, was not in the room. Whatever had taken the chair had taken the cord with it. And something had cut the remainder, precisely, at the boundary of whatever space the chair had entered. I picked up the cut end. The cut surface was cold, not room temperature cold. The cold of something that had been in a very different environment from this one. I measured the room again. Systematically this time, not just the overall depth, but every wall section, every corner angle, the full three-dimensional geometry. The west wall was correct. The south wall was correct. The ceiling was correct. The east wall, the exterior wall, the one with the window overlooking the street, was correct at the top, correct at the middle. At the bottom, in the 18 inches above the floor, the wall had moved. Not dramatically. 4 inches. The wall was 4 inches closer to the center of the room than my drawing specified. 4 inches less than the floor above, 4 inches less than the floor below. I put my hand flat against the wall at floor level. It was not warm, it was not cold, it was nothing. The complete absence of temperature, not neutral, not ambient, absent. I pressed harder, no resistance change. The wall felt like a wall. But my hand registered no thermal information whatsoever, as if the wall had no relationship to the temperature of anything around it. I had specified the thermal performance of that wall assembly myself. R19 continuous insulation, thermal break at every fastener. It should have been the warmest exterior wall surface in the building. I stood up and I stepped back from the wall. The room was 11 feet 5 inches deep now. It had been 11 feet 9 4 days ago. The room was still shrinking. I did not leave. I want to explain why without excusing it. I had designed this building. Every load path, every connection detail, every spatial relationship in this structure had come from my work. If something was happening to a room in a building I had created, the professional obligation, the ethical obligation, I would say, was to understand it fully before doing anything else. I also knew that what I was documenting, if I reported it without complete evidence, would end my career. An architect who reports that a room in his own building is consuming furniture and shrinking over time does not continue to receive commissions. So I stayed. I documented. I built the most precise record I could. I moved my desk into the hallway. I worked from there, study door open, watching the room from a distance. I set up a measuring station at the doorway, a laser level on a tripod taking depth readings every 6 hours, logging automatically to my laptop. The room lost 4 inches in the first week of automated measurement. 3 inches in the second week. The rate was slowing, but the direction was not changing. I watched it shrink, and I documented it, and I told myself I was being responsible. On the 41st day, I woke at 2:30 in the morning to a sound from the study. Not a crash, not a voice. A sound I can only describe as settling. The sound a building makes when load redistributes. A deep tectonic shift that you feel in your sternum before you hear it with your ears. I have heard that sound in structures undergoing controlled demolition. I have never heard it in an occupied building. I went to the study door. The laser level on my tripod was still running. The screen showed the current depth reading, 10 feet 8 inches. The room had lost 11 inches in the 6 hours since my last manual check. In 6 hours. The rate had not slowed, it had accelerated. I opened the door. The room looked the same, books on shelves. I had not returned any furniture after the chair. Desk lamp on the floor in the corner, where I had moved it after the desk went to the hallway. The window, the east wall, the ceiling, Everything looked the same, but the room felt smaller, not measurably, in the way a room feels smaller when it is fuller, when the air is denser, when there is less of something invisible that rooms are supposed to have. I stepped just inside the doorway. The sound came again, below me. Not from the floor, from below the floor. A settling, a redistribution, something adjusting to a new configuration. I stepped back into the hallway. I looked at the laser-level screen. 10 feet 4 inches. The room had lost 4 inches while I was standing in it. The objects came back. On the 48th day, I arrived at the study at 7 a.m. to take my morning measurement and found them stacked in the center of the room. The chair, both cameras, the paperweight, the coffee mug, the Ching reference book. Every object that had disappeared over 5 years of living in that apartment. Stacked. Deliberately. Carefully stacked. Not piled. Not thrown. Arranged by size. Largest at the base, with a precision that I recognized as intentional because I have an eye trained to recognize intentional arrangement. Someone, or something, had considered how to place them. I stood in the doorway and I looked at the stack. The objects were not damaged, not visibly, but they were different in a way that I needed several minutes to identify. The surfaces were wrong. The chair leather had a texture that was subtly altered, not worn, not damaged, but as if the grain had been rearranged. The cameras were intact, but the plastic housing of each had a matte finish it hadn't had before. The Ching book's cover had changed color, marginally, measurably. The blue shifted slightly toward gray, as if they had spent a long time in a different kind of light. I photographed everything. I did not enter the room. I checked the depth measurement from the doorway, 9 feet 1 inch, and on the wall behind the stack of objects, I saw something I had not noticed in 48 days of looking at that wall. Marks. Not damage, marks. Precise, deliberate, covering the lower 3 feet of the north wall in a pattern I could not immediately parse. I am an architect. I read drawings. I understand spatial notation. These marks were a drawing, a plan view, a floor plan drafted with a precision that required instruments I did not see evidence of, showing a space I did not recognize. Rooms I had not designed, corridors that did not correspond to any floor of this building, and in the northeast corner of the drawn plan, a room marked with a single symbol. I know that symbol. It appears in architectural notation systems across multiple traditions. It means void. We need to stop here. James sent us photographs of the marks on the north wall. We had them reviewed by 2 people, an architectural historian who specializes in spatial notation systems and a surveyor with 30 years of field documentation experience. The architectural historian said the plan drawn on the wall uses a notation system she could not place in any tradition she had studied. The underlying logic is consistent with architectural drawing practice, but the specific symbols do not correspond to any documented system. Western, Eastern, historical, or contemporary. She said, "Someone drew this who understood space the way architects understand space, but they were not working in any system I have access to." The surveyor examined the precision of the lines. He said the drafting quality exceeded what is achievable freehand by any human practitioner. The lines, measured in James's photographs, are consistent to within fractions of a millimeter across a surface area of approximately 30 square feet. He said, "This was not drawn by hand. There are no instruments in those photographs. I don't know what made these lines." We also asked James to describe the symbol in the northeast corner of the drawn plan, the one he identified as meaning void. He sent us a photograph of it. We showed it to the architectural historian without context. She looked at it for a long time. Then she said, "That's not a notation symbol. That's a warning." We asked what it was warning about. She said, "Whatever is in that space, don't put anything else in it." We're going back to James's recording. I went back one final time, 3 days after I found the objects in the drawing, late, after midnight. I had been in the hotel for a week by then. I had started staying there after the objects returned, after I understood that whatever the room was doing, it was not finished. I went back because of the drawing. I am an architect. A drawing is a document. A drawing means someone intended to communicate something about space, and whatever had drawn that plan on my wall had done it with a precision and an intentionality that I recognized as professional, as deliberate. I needed to understand what it was showing me. I let myself into the apartment. I went directly to the study doorway. I did not turn on the overhead light. I used my phone torch, angled low. The stack of objects was still there. The drawing was still on the wall. I stood at the threshold. The room measured 8 feet 9 inches. I could see the east window clearly. I could see the shelves. The space was recognizable as the room I had worked in for 5 years. I turned off my phone torch. The room was not dark, not bright, not lit by any source I could identify. A sourceless gray that was not the absence of light, but a different kind of light. A light that showed surfaces without creating shadows, that illuminated without direction. I stood in it. The east wall was not there. I mean that precisely. The wall was present. I could see its surface, the window frame, the window glass. But behind it, visible through it, the way weather is visible through glass, there was no 14th floor of Meridian Tower. There was no Houston Street. There was no city. There was space, unstructured, unlit, extending in every direction without boundary or feature or termination. And it was full, not of objects, of the accumulated presence of everything that had ever entered that room and not returned. Not visible as individual things. Present the way a crowd is present in a dark room. You cannot see faces, but you know the space is occupied. My legs were working correctly. I want to note that specifically. Every physical system was operating normally. What stopped working was the part of me that had a next action. I stood in the gray light at the threshold of a room I had designed, and I looked at the space behind its east wall, and I had no next action for the first time in 31 years of professional practice. I don't know how long I stood there. I know that at some point I became aware that the space on the other side of the wall was not static, that it was, very slowly the way tidal water is slow, orienting toward the threshold, toward me. I stepped back into the hallway. I pulled the study door closed. I left the apartment. I have not been back. I am at the hotel. I have been here 6 weeks. I have my drawings. I have my photographs. I have 48 days of laser measurement data showing a room contracting from 12 feet 4 inches to 8 feet 9 inches, and still, as far as I know, contracting. I have not been back to measure it. I don't know if I will. The building manager called me 3 times in the first 2 weeks. I told him I was traveling. He said a resident on the 15th floor had reported a draft from the northeast corner. He said the floor felt uneven in that section. He asked if I had time to inspect it. I told him to call a structural engineer. He said, "You are the structural engineer." I told him I was no longer practicing. I hung up. He has not called again. I still have the key. It's in my hotel room, on the nightstand. I don't know why I keep it. I don't know if I'm keeping it so I can go back, or so nothing else can use it. I have started noticing things about this hotel room. The northeast corner of this room, I chose it deliberately, I think, though I didn't realize it at the time, is the bathroom. small, contained. I measured it on the second day. The dimensions matched the fire safety plan on the back of the door. Last week I measured it again. The depth was 1.5 inches short. I told myself it was the measuring tape, a cheap hotel-supplied tape, probably stretched over years of use. I bought a new one. Same result, 1.5 inches. I have not told the hotel. I don't know how to say it in a way that doesn't sound like what it sounds like. I have started sleeping with the lights on, not the overhead light. That's too much. The bathroom light, with the door open a crack. I tell myself it's because I'm in an unfamiliar room and the dark is disorienting. That's not why. I want to see the northeast corner. If it moves again, if it opens, if something comes back through it that I left in the other room. I don't know what I think is going to happen. I have 31 years of training in spatial logic and none of it applies to this. I'm sending you my documentation, all of it. The drawings, the photographs, the measurement logs. I need someone else to have it. Not because I think it will help, because I don't want to be the only person who knows. We visited Meridian Tower 2 weeks after James sent us his recording. The building manager, the same man James mentioned, led us into the 14th floor apartment. He said James had stopped returning his calls. He said the apartment was technically still occupied, but he was concerned. He used the word structural several times without specifying what he meant. The study door was closed. The hallway outside it was cold, measurably colder than the rest of the apartment, by 4 degrees according to our thermometer. We opened the door. The room measured 7 feet 4 inches deep. The objects were still there. The chair, the cameras, the paperweight, the mug, the book, but they were no longer stacked. They were arranged in a line, precisely centered from the doorway to the east wall. The drawing on the north wall was gone. The wall was clean. The east wall was cold to the touch, not the cold of an exterior wall in winter. The cold James described, the cold of something that had been in a very different environment. We measured the room on the 15th floor above, 12 feet 4 inches, correct. We measured the room on the 13th floor below, 12 feet 4 inches, correct. On the 14th floor, in the 7-foot 4-inch space between the doorway and the east wall, there was no structural explanation for where the missing 5 feet had gone. We asked the building manager if any other residents had reported anything unusual. He said one resident on the 22nd floor had complained about a draft. Another on the 8th floor had asked to be moved to a different unit because their home office felt smaller than it used to. We asked if those units were on the northeast corner. He said, all of them. We contacted the structural engineer who had reviewed James's drawings before we aired this. We told her the current depth of the study. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, that room should have collapsed by now. The load paths don't work at that dimension. The floor slab should have failed. We asked why she thought it hadn't. She said, I don't think the load is going down anymore. I think it's going somewhere else. We asked where. She said, the same place the room is going.